Here we go. Week 6 is upon us. It's the San Francisco 49ers and the Cleveland Browns. Keys to victory, what the 49ers have to do to beat the Browns, and that really unspoken connection between Kyle Shanahan and Jim Schwartz, which is actually really important and runs through, I think, both organizations. Coming at you right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Make sure you are one. Subscribe up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use promo code lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Ooh, doggy. All right. 5-0 San Francisco 49ers, 2-2 fresh Cleveland Browns coming off a bye. Not looking good for Deshaun Watson to play in this one. Probably we'll see PJ Walker. That's the intel from our guy, Jeff Lloyd, the host of Locked On Browns. We'll see what happens once game time comes, but that's not good for the Cleveland Browns. But you know what the Cleveland Browns do have, Croc, that I want to start with here and talk about a lot today is that defense. And they have a good defense, and they've only allowed 3 passing touchdowns in 4 games on the season. 2 rushing touchdowns to Lamar Jackson as well. Some defensive touchdowns, which is why they're, someone came at us on the YouTube comments, Croc, and was like, what are you talking about? They've given up 24 points, 28 points. And I was like, you got to go watch those games, or at least look a little closer at the box scores, because, TJ Watt scoring with the Steelers defense. I think it was Highsmith. Somebody else had an interception, pick 6 as well. So the scores weren't given up by the Cleveland Browns defense. So they have a really good defense. They're only giving up on average 15 points per game so far this season. And it's going to look familiar up front, Croc, because Jim Schwartz runs that wide 9 front, and it's an aggressive front. And there's going to be stunts, there's going to be twists, there's going to be everything, including one of the elite edge rushers in the NFL in Myles Garrett coming at the San Francisco 49ers, coming at quarterback Brock Purdy. But what's interesting is, in a lot of ways, Jim Schwartz is the reason the San Francisco 49ers run the scheme that they run. And I didn't quite put it together exactly until this week, because I know Kyle Shanahan likes this defense, and the wide 9 has done a good job of stopping his run game, and that's why he noticed it. But you know why he noticed that, Croc, is because Jim Schwartz's defenses have done so well against Kyle Shanahan's offenses traditionally. This one, Jack Hammer brought the info on this one and has it all laid out. So I'm going to go to his tweet. So it's a 1-8 record Kyle Shanahan has facing Jim Schwartz 9 times. 1-8 for Kyle Shanahan. This is going all the way back to the Atlanta Falcons days. And in those matchups and beyond that, in those matchups, his offense has scored has scored over 20 points just once. We're talking Shanahan offenses versus Jim Schwartz defenses. As the Falcons offensive coordinator in 2016, Shanahan's offense averaged 33.9 points through the first 9 games. In week 10, they faced the Eagles with Jim Schwartz as defensive coordinator. Philadelphia held Atlanta to only 15 points, so less than half what they've been doing all year long in that one. And then, again, that was a powerhouse 2016 Kyle Shanahan Super Bowl offense. It was the only time that season the Falcons didn't score at least 23 points. And the 40, it's not done yet. Sorry, you guys are going to hear from Croc in a second, but I want to lay this one out here because there's a lot of connections between Shanahan and Jim Schwartz. So if you're wondering why Kyle Shanahan wants that type of front, it's because of how well that front has done against his offenses traditionally. And then you look at defensive line coach Chris Kocurek, and the 49ers have that wide 9 front. Well, where was Chris Kocurek, a defensive line coach, but in Detroit when Jim Schwartz was the defensive coordinator. So there's a very strong connection here between Jim Schwartz, his defenses, and Kyle Shanahan and his offenses, and probably a very large reason why Kyle Shanahan's so adamant about running this style of defense, because he knows how well it works against his offense.
I think that was his thing with Robert Saleh, right? Hiring Robert Saleh was he played against that Seattle scheme cover 3, tried to get Gus Bradley, wasn't able to get him, and then he found Saleh, brought Saleh in, and was like, I want you to run this type of system, and I know you know it, so I'm specifically going after you, which further confirms he is kind of the defensive coordinator. Like, he pulls the strings when it comes to how he wants his team built, really on both sides of the ball. But yeah, I mean, he's kind of always done that, where it's like, look, this is what I see, this is what's difficult for me. And I think for him also, knowing, I'll use me as an example. I know what type of receivers are difficult for me to guard, or more difficult. So typically I look for that in a receiver when I'm evaluating. So the quicker, twitchier, light on their feet guys, like those are the guys that for me, I have more trouble guarding as a bigger cornerback. So I tend to kind of like those guys a little bit more than the bigger guys where you can kind of see their moves going and they have to kind of win a very specific way. And I think that's what Kyle's doing, where it's like, look, when I'm calling my plays, these kind of defenses, they give me trouble. Let me go find somebody that does those things.
David in the chat says Kyle does not get enough credit for the defense as a head coach. And not only, I mean, he's not calling the plays on defense, but there's a big reason the 49ers are running their scheme as we're laying out here. But also from like the 49ers, it's funny because we talked about how the 49ers team is built and how it's hard to write a handbook, light three first round picks on fire, have the last pick in the draft be your franchise quarterback, have historically great draft picks from rounds 5 to round 7 that are starters and stars on your football team. But the mission statement from day one has carried through, and it was, we're going to have powerhouse defense. We're going to build through the defensive line first, and then Kyle Shanahan's going to coach up the scheme. And now 7 years into it, they've added so much offensive firepower as well, and they found their quarterback, as improbable as it was, in Brock Purdy, the 7th rounder. And now you have all that talent built up on the defense, built through the defensive line. But if you accumulated all this talent and developed talent on the offensive side of the ball, which produces double juggernaut action right now for offense and defense for the San Francisco 49ers, which leads me to a question I'm going to ask Croc a little bit later about the 49ers offense or defense is better. But Kyle Shanahan deserves a lot of credit because of the way this team is built, and they've moved and changed on the fly at times, and they've done a ton of different things, and sometimes just being aggressive, and sometimes that aggression is paid off, sometimes it's not paid off. But the one thing the 49ers are going to do is try to win and do everything they're going to do to win. They're competitive guys. They're competitive on the field. They're competitive in the front office. They're competitive in the coaching staff. And I think that comes through in the way they play on both sides of the ball.
Do you think because of Schwartz and how well he's done against Kyle Shanahan, that's why the point spread is so low right now? It's starting to slowly climb up. But when we spoke yesterday, I believe it was I think originally it was at -5.5. And I'm like, wow, that's super low. Throw all your money on that. Then it was 6.5 by the time I checked. Then I looked and it was 7. And then now it's at 8 last time I checked. So It's kind of going up. But even then, with how well the 49ers offense has played against teams, you kind of look at that, factor that all in to just destroying teams. Dallas Cowboys, number 2 defense in the league, like destroyed them. They've been putting up 30+ points a game. Why did anybody think this game would be close? Maybe it's somebody looking at Jack Hammer's tweets and saying, you know what, Jack Hammer says there's something there with Schwartz, and let's make this spread a little bit closer.
So, Croc, it's even gone up since we started this podcast. It's up to 10 now, is what I'm seeing. So the 49ers favored by 10 on the road. I think 24 hours ago, you could get it at 5.5. When we did our podcast with Jeff yesterday, which was about 24 hours ago, the crossover pod, it was 6.5. So there's a lot of money coming in on the 49ers side. So that line is absolutely growing, as it should. I mean,
I'm going to Reno. I'm going to Reno, and I was just like, man, I can't get to Reno fast enough, so I could throw everything on the 49ers. And now I'm not touching it. 10 points, I'm just not touching that.
Yeah, you didn't make it. It's not, I mean, look, the NFL is crazy. The 49ers are very unlikely to go undefeated, but the way they're playing right now, it doesn't feel like they can lose. So I want to talk a little bit about why the 49ers are playing so well right now, how George Kittle laid out that training camp might have had something to do with it because of an absence, not because who was there, but because who was not there at training camp this year. And maybe a little trash talk from the Cleveland Browns safety, Grant Delpit, as well, coming up next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Jace Case and Jace Medical. Make sure you are prepared. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jace Medical offers the Jace Case. The Jace Case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you peace of mind. So you're not just hoping you have access to medication in an emergency. We've been through pandemics. We've been through tons of supply chain issues, and maybe you're traveling with your family. There's an emergency. You don't have cell service. Make sure you have the medication you need specific to your family's needs in hand, and Jace Medical makes it simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. So don't get caught unprepared. And our listeners get $20 off a Jace Case on these life-saving antibiotics from Jace Medical by using code LOCKEDON at checkout on jacemedical.com. That's locked on at jacemedical.com. Jace, Jase, medical.com. All right, Croc. I'm going to ask you this question. What do you think is better? The 49ers, the entire Shanahan Lynch era until this year has been completely run by the defense. The defense has been stronger than the offense. Has that flipped? What is better right now? The 49ers offense or the 49ers defense? You're muted.
Yeah. I think it has flipped. It's the offense. And for the first time, it feels like the defense now has to complement the offense as opposed to it being the other way around. Think about play calling as well. And I think Kyle Shanahan agrees with maybe my sentiments on the offense playing better. He would play so conservative, like just the way he called plays. And I was very confused because, like, dude, you have a great defense. Why don't you be more aggressive? But I think it just took him to be more comfortable with the offense, the quarterback, etc. Well, he's so comfortable now. He's going for it anytime they get to 4th down. I'm like, hold on, I might need these field goals on PrizePicks. All right. but yeah, no, clearly you see the offense and how well they're firing. I think the defense does a really good job of giving the opportunities, but the offense has been the defense's best friend. The offense, long sustainable drives, scoring points every time. You know, the defense, as games go on, know more what they're getting from opposing offenses, being able to pin their ears back and try to get after the quarterbacks. You see a lot of 49ers pass rush grades up. I think Nick Bosa is like the highest graded defensive player as an edge rusher right now, or in the league as a whole. So you see how well the defense has played off of the offense, but I think it starts with the offense and just how consistent they've been every game. Did they have a possession last game where they didn't score outside of the fumble by McCaffrey? I don't think Wisnowski punted.
Yeah, no, he did. Remember, because who was it? Somebody basically fair caught.
Ronnie Bell.
Ronnie Bell caught one of his punts. Was basically a fair catch. Yeah. So
how many times has he punted in the last 2 games?
Remember the wish wash? He had 2 inside the 20, and I think they punted a few times. Yeah, but I mean, it feels like they score every time they have the ball, though. Yeah. You're not wrong there. How about this one, Croc? The 49ers right now, explosive, talking about that defense, explosive plays allowed by defenses in the NFL through week 5 of the season. And the San Francisco 49ers right now are number 1 in allowing the fewest explosive runs in the NFL with only 4, and are number 1 allowing the fewest explosive pass plays. Runs are, I think, 10 plus yards. Pass plays are 20 plus yards, dictated as explosive for this season. So the 49ers have the least amount of explosive runs and the least amount of explosive passes. They're tied, though. The team they're tied with for the least amount of explosive passes given up, the Cleveland Browns, with 9. And so the 49ers 13 explosive plays given up is by far the least in the entire NFL. Number one in both run and pass. The Cleveland Browns tied for number one in explosive run plays or explosive pass plays allowed. And it looks like they're pretty good with explosive run plays. They have 18 total explosive given up, which is second best in the NFL. So the 49ers got them beat by 5. So, I mean, it's hard to say the 49ers offense has flipped and has become better than the defense because the defense is still so dang good. But that's how good the offense is right now that we can even have that conversation for really the first time in a long time.
Well, here's the thing. I think what it ultimately comes down to, how good the 49ers are and how they, right now, at least what it looks like, and I think how everybody feels, without a doubt, like they are the best team in the NFL. They're the most well-balanced team. They're great on both sides of the ball right now. They complement each other well. You have great players all over the field. They're relatively healthy, and knock on wood, you want that to stay that way, though. I mean, it's just, this is the best 49ers team until we see just some drastic fall off or something. But since the mid-90s, like, do you feel comfortable? I mean, we've asked this question before, but every game that goes by, it's like they're checking off a box where it's like, man, I mean, what would this team look like against the Harbaugh teams? What would they look like against 2019? I mean, there would be like some tough matchups, of course, but just with the ability to score and how well Kyle Shanahan draws things up and how some of these other teams had to rely on winning. I mean, this is like one of the more dangerous 49er teams I've seen in a really long time. Those mid-90 teams, I know everybody who talks about the Super Bowl year 94, they had some really good years after that as well. But even then, I put this team and say, hey, go play against them. With our new rules, though. with the rules now, not with those back in the day rules.
Yeah, look, I don't want the 2023 49ers going up against Willis and Bowman and Hittner, right? Throwing
Goldson
around. Goldson, yeah. That was 10 years ago, but it was a brutally different football game. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable how different it is. Can you imagine just playing seeing how different one game is? Because people lose their minds right now when anybody has anything like that, any kind of hits like that. And that used to be like flex on them. That was a great play. Now it's like, oh my God, this guy should never be allowed to, this guy should go to prison for a decade for these kind of hits.
Well, go back to the 90s. They didn't have illegal contact. So when people talk about Jerry Rice being the GOAT, it's like, dude had to fight with DBs all the way down the field until the ball's in the air. Now, obviously, the 49ers ran the West Coast offense, so the ball was getting out a little bit quicker. But you can jam and push a receiver until the ball is thrown. And that's still the same in college right now. Like in college, they have that. In high school, they have that. NFL has illegal contact. They're the only ones that have it. And that's still relatively kind of new as far as kind of, it's more of this generation type of penalty. So, I mean, just throw this team in there. I think they should still be fine, because you got some physical type guys on the squad. But, I mean, even the rules, I mean, just drastically different.
Tony says, honestly, a top 3 all-time 49ers offense might be on par with the 1988 49ers team on offense. Now, the 1988 49ers team was like my gateway drug. That's like Montana and Rice and Brent Jones and Roger Craig. I mean, that's a hard unit to beat, but the 49ers are up there. What I think the 49ers are right now, team-wise, and kind of hopefully what they are right now. I made the joke about 1981 and in the catch because it was the Cowboys last week, but it might be. I think they lost. I think they missed out on their opportunity to get that 1981, that first Super Bowl win, right? The first Montana Walsh Super Bowl. I think they've been close recent years and kind of didn't get it. I feel like this is more like the 84 49ers team where they could still be good for a while and continue to win and get another one and maybe get another one and continue to be good for a while. But that 1984 team went 15-1, I believe, that year. And this is that season that it feels like was like, oh my gosh, this is the best team in their prime in the league. So I would compare this current team to the 1984 team. And that's being hopeful that there's great teams still to follow right now.
One thing that the 49ers have done a really good job of is just really kind of staying competitive throughout all of this. I keep wondering, when is there going to be a drop-off with the defense? And even if they're not as great as 2019, we're still talking about a top 5 unit regardless, right? Even if they're not as great as last year when they were the number 1 defense in the league, like they're still top 5. And then now the offense has caught up, and you look at the guys that are under contract, at least for the next 2 years, like everybody will be back. I think Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, who just got their extensions, have done a terrific job of doing what they wanted to do, right? Which was build something that could be sustainable. And outside of an outlier year, 2020, when everyone just got hurt, this is a team that has been super competitive. And even then, it feels like, and I hate even on the crossover episode, just the way we talked about the Niners, but you and I, we have gotten a lot of flack from fans for not being like positive enough. And I think right now you're hearing what it sounds like from both of us when we don't have anything bad to say about this team. And not saying we're fishing for things to point out bad, but, we like to bring different perspectives and, hey, think about this and, what would this look like? And maybe some hypotheticals. We can't even do that. Only hypothetical is this the greatest 49ers team ever? Like, they're playing that well right now.
Right. And like, you don't want to get ahead of, you don't want to put the cart in front of the horse, right? Because it's 5 weeks. You don't want to, you still got to win 10, 11 more games. We're talking about 1984, a 15-1 team. You still got to win a whole bunch of games to get to that point. And we're talking about Hall of Fame players and teams that won Super Bowls and multiple Super Bowls. And this 49ers team hasn't been able to do that yet. So you don't want to go too far. I think that's where we are in our mindset. It's like, man, it looks like one of those teams. They look right now in week 5 like as good of a 49ers team that we've seen in a long time, going back to 1994 for sure. I think it's fair to say that. How good they're going to be, we're going to find out, and it's all going to be for naught. Maybe not for naught, but it won't matter as much. You're not going to be able to rank them in the pantheon of great 49ers teams if they don't win a game in February, right? So that's a long ways away still.
What's the 49ers, if you could say this is the one thing that will hold them back, that has shown up so far in the games? Like, what's the weakness? I think a lot of people would say the cornerbacks, but to me, it doesn't feel like they're a weakness. If you could say they're like, that's the quote unquote weakest link of a really strong team, then all right? Like, that's what they did with the corners back in 2011, 12, 13, where it's like they were corners, but I thought they were good football players, like they were solid. But right now, like what does it feel like? Oh man, this is one thing that can jump up and bite the 49ers because the other teams can really expose this.
There isn't, because even there, like you mentioned, it's that, the nickel corner, the cornerback situation, maybe right side of the offensive line, but they haven't been problems, right? The 49ers are 5-0 and haven't felt like they were close, even with some of these games that were close-ish at halftime. The Niners kind of walked away in the second half of those games and ran away in some cases. Their problems that are pretty minor as it is have been masked because of how good they're playing everywhere else. And they might not really be much of a problem at all, but that's how good this team is. It's hard to even find that one weak link. I still think it is both of those two spots, especially on offense. We saw week 1, a glimpse of it with JJ Watt wreaking havoc, but they were so good and dominating them everywhere else. It didn't matter. If that happened in a closer game against a better team that was clicking on offense maybe a little bit more, then the 49ers might have been in trouble, and I think the Giants missed some opportunities for some turnovers early in the game. The 49ers haven't played from behind, but you have to really, really look to find anything where you're like, okay, we haven't quite seen this scenario play out. The 49ers have been front runners in every game. Let's see a negative game script in the second half, and we just haven't seen any of those things play out.
The Cincinnati Bengals a couple years ago went to the Super Bowl, and they had a terrible offensive line, and Joe Burrow was getting hit left and right, and they were still in the Super Bowl. We look at it. I mean, it's not even across the entire offensive line. It's just kind of like, McKivitz, can you just hang on just enough?
And Burford is a better run blocker than, he had some nice run blocks last game. Better run blocker than the pass blocker, maybe. And Myles Garrett's going to move around, so they got their hands full. And so, a turnover, a batted ball. There's the ball is funny and can bounce some funny ways, and they're going to be a more difficult defense. I think they're going to be a better defense for the 49ers against the 49ers than the Cowboys were, for sure, because the Cowboys got lit up. But there's some ways that it could go bad for the 49ers. We just haven't seen it yet.
Did you see the team that was shadowing Myles Garrett, where he would, before the snap, he went to one side, then they shifted their guys over, and then because they shifted their guys over, he went to the other side, and they shifted their guys again, and ultimately they had to call timeout. It
was like delay game or timeout or something, dude. That was hilarious. Why don't offensive linemen travel like cornerbacks? Well, you got to get set. The offensive line has to choose first. That's why. So that was really funny. We got to move along here. I want to talk about Kittle and Delpit's comments next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the most fun you will have this football season, and making up to 25 times your money in the process. All you do is you select 2 or more players, you pick more or less than their projected stats on PrizePicks, and place your entry. Couldn't be easier. You can place your entry in less than 60 seconds and turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. For example, 238.5 passing yards for Brock Purdy, kind of like that on the more side. And after going through how good the Browns defense is against the pass, maybe it's a McCaffrey game again here and a big running game for the San Francisco 49ers, and potentially a close game. Potentially it could be some bad weather, looking like it might not rain after all. Too bad, at least on Sunday. But more than on Christian McCaffrey's rushing yards, that's usually not a bad way to go. And PrizePicks has a reboot policy if your entries get hurt. It's the only daily fantasy sports platform with that injury insurance. NFL games, college football top 25 games. If a player gets hurt in the first half, doesn't return in the second half, that player is rebooted at PrizePicks. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL or download the app and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100 at PrizePicks. Daily fantasy sports made easy. All right. Yeah, I mean, that was comical, seeing Myles Garrett bounce around from one side to the other, and then the team keep motioning around. And it's like, dude, what are you guys doing? You got to snap the ball at some point, because you just can't do that all day. The defense can move around, the offense can't. It's just unbelievable. And so that's the kind of and we see it with Nick Bosa every single week. That's the elite level defenders. That's what they can bring. And the 49ers this year in 6 weeks have seen, aside from Nick Bosa, the 3 best edge players in the entire league. Micah Parsons wasn't a problem last week. TJ Watt was a problem in week 1, but it didn't matter because they dominated so much everywhere else. We'll see if Myles Garrett becomes a problem for the 49ers this week, but it's one of the few things I could see that lines up as maybe an advantage that the Browns have against the 49ers.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think the 49ers, we look at the right side of the offensive line and McKivitz and even Spencer Burford, who's, their just play has been kind of up and down. Like you said earlier, it just hasn't been an issue. That's always look at, is this guy a liability? And I think against Watt, McKivitz was definitely a liability, right? Like that's the stuff you don't want to see. 49ers still able to overcome it. I'd say since then, he's been better. Like I think he has played well enough. And I've talked about the cornerbacks and how I feel like, outside of Ward, even the secondary in general, 49ers haven't really invested a lot of capital or money into these guys to have like these lofty expectations of them play and play out. Just don't be an issue throughout the game. I think that McKivitz has played to that standard as well, where you don't expect him to blank guys. You actually expect Garrett to probably kick his ass a couple times, but just don't lose the game for the Niners. Don't be the guy when Colin Kaepernick's first start against the Bears and Aldon Smith had 5 sacks off of 1 right tackle, right? And they just were killing that guy. Like, just don't be that guy, whoever that right tackle for the Bears was.
And there was I think it was a shotgun handoff, right? It was a tackle for loss where McCaffrey got hit immediately by Parsons. And it was scary how fast Parsons got by McKivitz on the inside. And he just kind of was like, boop, boop. And I think there was supposed to be some help on the outside, and he went inside, and it was just like in the blink, he was back there and got him beat there. But he didn't get any sacks against Brock Purdy and the 49ers. So, and McKivitz is competitive, and Burford's a good player and competitive too. And I think they're getting better as the season goes along. So that's part of it. And there's obviously a lot of ways they can help. And the 49ers try to get the ball out early, which is one of the big keys. I thought it was fascinating with George Kittle. He was talking with, who's he talking with? He was talking with, I think it was McAfee. I think it was on the McAfee show this week. Kittle was on there, and he said a few things. But one of the things that stood out is he said that part of the reason the San Francisco 49ers offense is off to such a hot start is because in training camp, Nick Bosa wasn't there wrecking plays, and they were able to get a little bit more continuity. And I was like, well, that's fascinating, because every camp, remember, it's like, oh my gosh, the offense looks bad. The quarterbacks look bad because the defensive line is dominating the offensive line, and Trent Williams practices like 1 out of every 10 practices. And I never really thought about it as it's hard for the offense to even get continuity and feel good about going to the season because they're getting beat up in practice so much. So it's like the offense strikes back this year in training camp, and now you can see the fruits of it in the regular season. So that's what George Kittle said, which is part of the reason why the offense is playing so well.
Yeah, you want guys to compete and get better in practice, but if you have one guy just blowing up plays, I think we saw that on Hard Knocks with Quentin Williams. Quentin Williams was just destroying, I want to say it was like the Panthers in the joint practice. It's like, how can you even practice? Like, you got this big 95 back there every single snap, and he's counting them up. That's one, that's two. Then he got to like 8, 9, 10, and then even Aaron Rodgers was like, damn, that's 11. Like, he just kept getting back there and blowing plays up. It's very difficult to get in any type of rhythm or continuity or anything, especially when you have to rotate quarterbacks.
Do you have the exact quote from Grant Delpit, Croc?
I don't have the exact quote, but he did say this. I'll use exact words.
Okay.
The 49ers are on their high horse. They have to come to our house. He said that their quarterback, talking about Brock Purdy, is playing probably the best quarterback in NFL. He's in a system that fits him, which kind of sounded like a backhanded compliment. And I would expect that from a defender, right? Because like you said, like they're giving up 15 points a game. They are playing well. And if you watch how their guys, especially on the back end, play, a lot of swagger. And you watch how, Myles Garrett and the things that he's able to do. I could understand hearing that, like, to him, it's like, we're not the offense. Like, so the offense might struggle. Defense, we do our thing. We ball out. And I'm looking and I'm watching. I'm just like, they're cool. Okay. But it's on the 49ers to go in there and ball out.
No doubt. Do you think that's enough to be bulletin board material? I feel like the 49ers, that's another thing that they're doing that's at a super high level right now is mentally. These guys are unselfish. They come to play no matter what. They don't need bulletin board material, right? And it's funny because the way that Grant Delpit feels, and they have a right to feel that way. They're a good defense, and they've played good ball this year. But the Dallas Cowboys felt the exact same way with their defense, and the Niners threw up 42 points on them. So it's easier said than done against this 49ers team. That's why I'm kind of with you, Croc. I do think the offense might be better than the defense, which is amazing because the defense is, again, I think probably the best unit in the NFL on that side of the ball.
Well, this is what's going to be the big issue for the Browns, and we talked about it a little bit on the crossover episode. The 49ers are going to score points, or at least they're going to put the pressure on you to have to score points. And if you can't do it because Deshaun Watson isn't playing, like, you're in trouble. So no matter how good their defense can possibly be, they are not going to be able to get enough stops to cover up where their offense is deficient at. They lost Nick Chubb, so their running game with Ford, it's okay. Like, it's cool. He can run the rock a little bit. But what the 49ers do, they get up on you and they make Tyrod Taylor turn the ball over here and there. Like, you're going to be in trouble. Look at what the 49ers did to the Dallas Cowboys. Right away, it was boom, we punch you in the mouth. We stopped the run. Now it's on your quarterback to have to beat us. Oh, your quarterback can't beat us. And from there, it was just over. Yeah, think about teams that have had some success. Really, it's only kind of one quarterback, and that was Matthew Stafford, because he's actually good and he's throwing with anticipation and he's making big boy throws. But ultimately, it still ended up being all on him. And what did he do? Throw the ball to the 49ers twice. Like, that's what happened. So, again, not to say that this team is unbeatable, but they are extremely good and they play great complementary football. And if you don't have a quarterback on the other side that can challenge the defense, or at least make it to where you don't put all the pressure on your defense, then maybe you'll have a chance. But I don't think that it's Tyrod Taylor that can do it.
So while we were doing the pod, Croc, it looks like the report just did come out, thanks to everybody in the chat pointing out to us, that Deshaun Watson is for sure not starting now. That might be why the line continues to go up to the 49ers favored by 10 now. But to be honest with you, Deshaun Watson wasn't playing great, and it was pretty obvious he wasn't going to play. So, I mean, I don't know why the line should have changed that much just from from that report, because it was pretty. It looked most likely like he wasn't going to play, and if he was playing, he's going to have an injured shoulder. PJ Walker's not a terrible player.
I said Tyrod Taylor. I think I meant PJ Walker. My bad, y'all.
Yeah. Tyrod's in New York, I believe, right?
Yeah, they're like Tyrod Taylor. Croc, what the hell are you talking about? Yeah, PJ Walker.
PJ Walker. PJ Walker's a professional quarterback. He's started games before, and so you don't want to underestimate him. But everything does point to the 49ers in this one. I don't know if you want to take the 10 points or not, give up the 10 points or not, betting on the 49ers. But I don't know how you could predict that the Browns beat the 49ers with the way that the Niners are playing and with the way the Browns are playing on offense and without their quarterback.
And here's the even tougher thing, right? If you can't get a run game going, do you have receivers that can really threaten the 49ers? I talked about Amari Cooper. I still think that Amari Cooper is a solid receiver, but he's not as dynamic as he once was. And I think you would need that level of Amari Cooper, because now you got Njoku. He got the whole face burn stuff going on. How comfortable is he going to be in the game? And even then, he's kind of still been a little bit of an inconsistent guy, all type of athletic ability, and he can have explosive plays, but that just hasn't been him consistently throughout his career. You got Peoples Jones.
Yeah.
But are they guys that are going to really, really scare you? Again, it's everything I'm saying is to the extent of what you need to beat the 49ers. You got T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Tyler Boyd, and Joe Mixon in the backfield. That's a different conversation. The 49ers see that in a couple weeks. But that's not the Browns' offense right now. It's like Amari Cooper, and then we're kind of really struggling to have any consistency at the quarterback position, whether it was Deshaun Watson, DTR, who, his first game, he just found out before the game he was going to play, but that was tough for him. And then now Tyrod Taylor, a.k.a. PJ Walker. So it's really just a tough matchup for them with where they are right now. You catch the Browns later in the year where Watson is healthy, offense getting in the rhythm, Ford they're running back okay, this isn't Chubb, but okay, he's better. You catch that version a little bit later, and the defense still cooking how they are, then we might have something to talk about. But I think as it stands right now, where they're kind of scrambling to figure out who they are, what their identity is, and to get in the rhythm, I think it's a tough time for them to play the 49ers, even on the road. I mean, even at home, even with potential bad weather.
So key to victory is don't get hurt, don't turn the ball over. Is it that simple right now?
Don't turn the ball over, right? Don't miss opportunities. I mean, we saw week 1, 2022. It was a monsoon. I get it. But there were still some missed opportunities. Deebo Samuel fumbling inside the 5-yard line. That's bad. You don't want to see that. Trey Lance, he missed that tight end throw, right? Like, you don't want to see that. And then all of a sudden, you get some penalties from Dre Greenlaw and some late hits, and a game turned into a game that shouldn't have been. So, and then you had the Trey Lance interception. So you can't lose a turnover battle in a game like that. And you definitely want to make sure that you're a little bit more disciplined on the defensive side of the ball. Dre Greenlaw speaking particularly to you. So
don't give him 15 free yards if you don't have to. All right. Thanks everybody for jumping in the live chat with us here. If you are listening to us, say Friday morning on your way to work, we appreciate you and love you all the same. Appreciate all the everydayers every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts.
Oh, wait. Did we not give a I saw the comment in the chat.
Someone's mad because we didn't give we gave a prediction. Whoops. We gave a prediction. Yeah. Basically yesterday, it was pretty obvious what the prediction was. And I think it's still pretty obvious what the prediction is. And even Jeff was like, yeah, the 49ers are going to beat the heck out of us. So that was kind of the prediction from yesterday's show. I know one of the listeners was mad because we didn't give a proper prediction. So if you want to give a proper prediction, Croc, feel free.
I don't think anybody has to ask my prediction until somebody proves that they can stop the 49ers from scoring 30
the prediction
points.
part is like the least necessary part of this podcast recently. How about this one? I'm going to say that the 49ers 30, because Brock 30 is at quarterback and they always score 30, and it's going to double what the Browns give up, but maybe a defensive touchdown in there. So maybe all 30 points don't come from the offense. and the 49ers are going to win by 11. So 30-19, that's my score.
Can I touch on this from MKK?
Yep.
So he says, isn't every offensive system? That is definitely true. I think what people are alluding to, whether it's Grant Delpit or other people that might question Brock Purdy and some things, which obviously he's played amazing. When you're talking about a system, whether it's for Tom Brady or Mahomes or whatever, there are certain guys that have very specific skill sets, right? And that's typically why some guys go higher and some guys go a little bit lower. A guy that goes higher, there might be a little bit more flexibility. You still want to put him in something that works for him, but there might be more flexibility within that. As opposed to somebody like Brock Purdy, where it was very specific on his scouting report. It said, wants to get the ball out of his hands quick, doesn't have the biggest arm, should rely on a play action based offense. And he got put in an offense that fit his exact skill set. So, yes, every offense is a system technically, but there are some quarterbacks that are able to play in other systems. You know, Tom Brady was able to go to Tampa Bay and it didn't really matter. Maybe Brock Purdy can go to a different team and it not matter as well. But so far, what we've seen, what was ideal for him has aligned with what his scouting report said, and the 49ers are reaping the benefits of that. So I don't think that's something that anybody should take lightly or as a backhand, or like, who cares? Like, he's in whatever worked for him. Like, he's in that. So let's ride that. Let's ride.
16-13. We've got some shutout predictions, 21-0 in this one. I think smart money's probably on a low-scoring game here, but the 49ers just put up 30 every week. So until the 49ers lose a game, I'm going to predict wins. And until the 49ers don't put up 30, I'm going to predict 30 points for the San Francisco 49ers. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Croc and I back post-game right here, Locked On 49ers.
Subscribe to this video.